Okay, guys. So let me get this straight. We have a high-ranking member of Governor Maura Healey's administration, and they just got caught trafficking 21 kilograms of cocaine. And I'll get to that number 21 in a few minutes here. I know that it was 8 kilograms, but there's more to the story. What a surprise, right? So I'm not some kind of cocaine enthusiast. I don't know how much a kilogram is. I don't know what it looks like, all right? And I did a little bit of research, and I could be wrong here. I don't know. Different states could have different prices, and if somebody here knows better than me, please leave a comment. But apparently, 21 kilograms of cocaine has a street value of almost $2 million or something like that. To me, that sounds like enough cocaine to supply a small city worth of parties for a year. I mean, really, we are talking about the kind of cocaine, after I looked up the quantity, okay? This would make Pablo Escobar smile, okay? It would make Pablo Escobar proud, all right? This isn't some small baggie that was, a college student or somebody like that got caught with, even though that would be bad too. To me, this looks like some kind of industrial drug trafficking. I could be wrong on that, but this could be a, multi-million-dollar operation. Who knows? Because this was intercepted at an actual state office. That's the other thing. This was his government office. This is the place where he collects around $115,000 salary paid by us, okay? And I really don't even know where to start with this one because I find it absolutely outrageous. I do. And look, I talk about a lot of things here in Massachusetts, whether it's the overrides bankrupting towns or audits being blocked by Beacon Hill, the mass save scam bleeding working families or communities dry, but this is different. Okay, this isn't about some kind of policy disagreement or a budget shortfall or some kind of budgeting priority. This is about the people that are running the state, mainly into the ground, I would say, because these are the people we are supposed to trust. But when you are hiring people, when you're hiring these individuals who are either completely incompetent, completely unvetted, or so poorly vetted that a literal potential alleged drug trafficker could just slip through the cracks and ends up on a state payroll, you got to think to yourself. You really got to think to yourself, what the hell is going on here? What the hell is going on? Lamar Cook, that's his name. Remember the name. Because when Healey hired him, she hired him back, I believe it was 2023, as her Western Massachusetts deputy director. Now, she didn't just give this guy a job, she gave him a platform, and she called him, and I quote here almost directly, a proven leader with deep ties in Western Massachusetts. Even the Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll went on further to say something along the lines of we have a well-known trusted leader who would make a major impact or something like that on the region. And when I read this, I'm thinking to myself, a major impact? Well, I guess he got that part right? So, here's what I know so far, all right? So the state police, they seized those 21 kilograms. This was an ongoing investigation. 8 kilos were part of a controlled delivery at a Springfield state office building. This is where Cook worked. But there was also an additional 13 kilos that were intercepted earlier this month. You may have missed this at Hotel UMass in Amherst. But here's where I would say, and I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here, but really, Cook used to be the director of Hotel UMass, okay, before Healey brought him into her administration. So really, we're not talking about some random address mix-up or something like that. To me, this looks like a pattern, and I don't think this is a major coincidence, okay? I don't think this is some kind of coincidence here, because when you have packages that are showing up at his old workplace, you got to think to yourself, where there's smoke, there's fire. You see what I'm saying? And when you have packages showing up at his current workplace, like something is going on here. Okay, something is going on here. So, and before I forget, they also found, and I don't even know if the Globe talked about this. I'm sure they may not have, but they found an illegal firearm and ammunition on him, which is, I guess, just the cherry on top. We'll see if he gets the same treatment as Kyle Wayne, right? So here's how it goes. Healy's office, of course, they released a statement, and they said the conduct was unacceptable and represented a major breach of public trust. Well, they got that right. And this guy, I believe, was terminated immediately. That's great. I'm glad that we were able to at least clear that up. But here's my question, and really here's the reason that I wanted to talk about this and make this video. How did this guy get hired in the first place? It's as simple as that. It's a very simple question, guys. Like, what kind of vetting, what is the vetting process here that could allow something like this to happen? Or allow an alleged drug operation or a drug operator to not only get a state job, but also get a state job that pays six figures. And before you say, this is just one bad actor or one bad apple, let me tell you, this is not an isolated incident. You may remember this, you may not, but this is a pattern in my opinion, and I think it's a disturbing pattern because we're seeing this pattern repeat, and it's happening in every level of Massachusetts government. If you don't remember, I'll refresh your memory. Let me remind you about Boston for a second. So Mayor Michelle Wu, the spring of 2025, look at how many arrests were involving her direct city staffers. There was a domestic violence charge. There was an assault charge. And again, these are not just random employees, guys. These are people that are close to her administration. And not that I want to go off on a tangent here, but I think this is relevant, okay? I think that this is relevant because this happened during Wu's re-election push where she crushed Josh Kraft, which just goes to show you the type of people that we are dealing with here, the type of voters, especially that are in these deep blue liberal city like Boston. You see what I'm saying? Because when you think about this, how do multiple people with these kinds of issues end up working in City Hall at the same time? What does that say about the hiring process that's happening here in Massachusetts? What does that say about the culture? And I'll just say this. Wu's office says that they have a zero tolerance policy and then they, try to act swiftly when problems arise. But the fact is, they're the ones that have to create the problem and then solve the problem that they created. Okay? Swift action after the fact doesn't answer the question of how these people are getting hired in the first place. How are these people getting hired to begin with? Do you see what I'm saying here? And it's not just Cook, and it's not just Wu staffers. Let's not forget, I just remembered this one. Let's not forget about the RMV hiring a registered sex offender. That happened under this administration. But here's what I really think is going on. Okay, here's what I really think is going on. I think that Massachusetts has created a system where hiring is based less on competence or merit and more on connections. And maybe as I'm sitting here thinking, and maybe it's just more about the optics of who they are hiring versus the merit that they bring to the table. And it's really about who you know as well. I mean, that happens in a lot of places and in a lot of cases. And, what circles you're with, who your family is, what business connections you may have, all of the above. But the fact is, I really think this is about optics and it's about politics. And it's about whether somebody could it's not about whether somebody could actually do the job. It's about the optics of the job and the placement of the job that they've received. That's what this is. Okay, that's what this is. And the fact that this is happening and the reality of why this is happening is that there's no opposition. There's no pushback. There's absolutely no checks and balances. And when one party controls everything, the governor's office, the legislature, the city hall, there's absolutely no accountability and there's absolutely no transparency. There's no one forcing them to answer tough questions or hard questions. There's nobody demanding better except for maybe us, I guess. I don't know. Look, look at it this way, okay? Look at what happened. The state audit is a perfect example of this, okay? When you won't even have an audit of your state and the systems to try to make them more efficient or to try to make them better or try to look for fraud, try to look for waste or try to look for abuse, I think that tells you everything that you need to know, okay? Because they've done everything in their power to block Diana. They have. They hired these fancy lawyers on our dime to argue that it's unconstitutional, right? They're stonewalling, they're delaying, all this other stuff. And Mike Minogue had to get involved with this and help her to, I guess, countersue or to sue the legislature in order to get this to go through, or Andrea Campbell specifically, who is another Democrat and another lunatic, okay, because she won't even enforce the damn law. She just keeps kicking the can down the road. I personally think that she wants to run for governor one day. That's what I think. I really do. That's what I honestly think. And when you don't have consequences here, the people that are affected the most are the voters. That's who gets affected the most when there's no consequences. Nothing ever happens. No one ever gets voted out, and nobody ever faces any levels of real backlash. And that's the environment that we are living in here. And I absolutely hate living in this environment because it's an environment where the people in power know that they're untouchable. And it just bothers me. Okay, it just bothers me. And look at it this way. When these people could hire whoever they want, spend whatever they want, and then it all blows up in their faces, they just put out a press release or they put out a statement, they fire somebody, and they move on like nothing happened. But that doesn't solve the underlying or overarching problem, okay? It just eliminates a problem, but it doesn't solve the problem, okay? And remember, these are all taxpayer-funded jobs. We are paying these salaries. We are paying for the lawyers defending the legislature. We are paying for the shelter crisis that's being completely mismanaged. We are paying for Mass Save, which is funneling money from poor cities to wealthy suburbs. We are paying for all of this. And what are we getting in return? Think about if you guys were investors and you were looking at this state, think about a business, okay? And you're looking at a return on investment, nobody is going to come here. That's why we have absolutely bare minimum. We're at the lowest tier poll of private sector jobs created. It's just the facts, guys. You have domestic violence in City Hall, sex offenders in the RMV, and a legislature that won't even be audited to help itself. This is a government that's more interested in protecting itself than serving the people that are paying into it. This is what unchecked power looks like. And you know what's funny about this? You know what's funny about unchecked power? These are the type of people, remember, these are the type of people that are in support and probably contributed to the No Kings protest, brought and paid for protest, right? Why they themselves are sitting on the throne. Do you see what I'm saying here? It's pure ego. It's pure narcissism, and it's pure hypocrisy to not even be able to look in the mirror and think to yourself that you are operating in the same way that you condemn. That is what bothers me the most, okay? Because these people feel like that they are untouchable. And this is honestly what happens when a one-party state runs everything and there's no one to hold them accountable, except for maybe us, right? And maybe a few other people here too. Like when you have a hiring process, okay, and it's based on connections and not competence, that's a problem. This is what happens when the system is just so utterly broken that basic vetting, making sure somebody doesn't have a drug trafficking or alleged drug trafficking ring. How do these people get hired? And the worst part of this is that we are funding our own decline. Every paycheck, every tax dollar, every Mass Save charge buried in your utility bill, every usage fee that's buried in your utility bill, it's all going to prop up a system that doesn't work for you, okay? It works for them. It works for the insiders, and it works for the well-connected, the people that know how to play the game. And Lamar Cook, this guy made around, again, $115,000 a year. That's taxpayer money, guys. That's your money. And for what? So he could allegedly use a state office as a hub for for some kind of drug operation? I don't care if you're left. I don't care if you're right. I don't care if you're center, okay? I also don't care if you love Mara Healey or love Michelle Wu or if you hate them. I think that when you have instances like this, it should make everybody upset. This should make everybody demand better because it's not necessarily about politics now. This is about basic competence. This is about whether the people running the state and our cities can do a bare minimum. Can somebody please tell me, could these people at the very, very least do a bare minimum? You could at least hire people who aren't criminals. And really, is that too much to ask? It's a failure. And believe me, this Lamar Cook is just the latest example. But guess what? He's not going to be the only example. I don't know what the hell they're doing here, guys. I really don't. I also don't know what we are accepting and how much more that we're going to be willing to pay for a government that doesn't work for us, but for everyone in the government and their own self-interests. That's all this is. That's really all that this is. And it really bothers me. What really bothers me the most is that when these type of instances occur, everything gets downplayed, and it gets downplayed by the legacy media. And the way that they do this, by the way, the way that they do this is by writing, these short form articles about what happened. Okay, this guy, had drugs, he got arrested. That's pretty much it, right? But nobody really dives into the reason why. Not necessarily why, he had the drugs or anything of that nature, but how he got to that position in the first place. And that's mostly what I'm interested in, right? I want to know what the standard operating procedures are to get hired by this state. I mean, it's really outrageous to me. And that's where the bigger picture or the deeper thinking lies, I think. I feel like this system is broken. I really do. If we can't even hire people to do a good job, imagine what the people that are still in office are doing, okay? It's sad is really what it is. It's a sad situation. It's very sad, guys. Anyway, I wanted to talk about this a little bit today and just give my opinion on this. But the hiring process of these people is just completely backwards, and that's how I feel. Anyway, that's it for today's video, guys. I'll see you next one. Bye-bye.